Mhm. There's Neve. You want to take it away, Hayat?
Hold on one quick second.
Yeah, sure. I see there's a couple of people still rolling in anyway. Oh, wow, even more.
6:35 sounds about right. Great.
Yeah. Hey,
Hi.
Kelsey, it's good to see you.
I see a lot of my good friends, a lot of people from Dorchester People for Peace and Justice. Welcome, everybody. Hello. We're really glad you've joined us for this presentation on Yemen. This event has been organized and sponsored by Dorchester People for Peace and Justice and the Raytheon Anti-War Campaign of Mass Peace Action. My name is Hayat Imam. I'm a member of both of these two fine organizations, and I'll be your moderator today. Our presenter is Brian Garvey. He will speak for about half an hour, and then you'll get a chance to ask your questions. We just wanted to let you know right away that instead of using the chat function for questions, we thought we would ask you to raise your hand by going through the participants button. And not to worry, we will go over this again before the Q&A starts. But let me start us off now with our thanks to the co-sponsors of this webinar. They are Mass Peace Action, Friends Meeting in Cambridge, American Friends Service Committee, Veterans for Peace Chapter 9, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Campaign for Peace, Disarmament and Common Security, Revolutionary United Front, and Committee for Peace and Human Rights. Thank you all for being there with us. Thank you. So since 2015, a coalition led by Saudi Arabia, which also included United Arab Emirates, UAE, has been bombing the country of Yemen. So these 5 long years of nonstop aggression has caused immense suffering for the people of Yemen. And unfortunately, it's still not over. It's still continuing as we speak right now. And what is surprising, I think, is that despite this monumental humanitarian crisis, there's hardly any media coverage of this devastating situation. So tonight, we want to redress that balance with this presentation. What we hope is that you will leave with a clearer picture of this catastrophe in Yemen. You will also receive some revelations about the direct participation of the United States in this destruction and learn about the huge culpability of the Massachusetts-based company, Raytheon Technologies company. On the more positive side, we hope that we will explore together the way forward for action. We want to share with you the opportunities that now exist. We're in this very different political moment. And we will also let you know about that after many years, there's an international outcry that is sort of coordinated right now against this aggression in Yemen. And we will try and think together of how we can all join together in this worldwide show of solidarity for Yemen. So to contribute to the context and the mindset with which we approach Yemen, I'd just like to remind us that even though most of the time when we hear Yemen being mentioned, people will call it the poorest country in the Middle East, I think that it is worth remembering that Yemen was not always that way. Yemen has an amazing illustrious history going back 3,000 years. It's one of the oldest centers of civilization in the Middle East. and it was known for its vibrant trade and its beautiful architecture, some of which can still be seen today. And actually, many of us may know about Yemen from biblical history, where it is known as the land of the Sabaeans. So when we are confronted by the plight of this country, let us remember the ravaging over time that has brought this country to its knees today. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker. Brian Garvey is a full-time organizer for Mass Peace Action with a strong focus on the Middle East. He has done a tremendous job of developing the participants of millennials in the peace movement, and he is a leading voice in the Raytheon Anti-War Committee. Brian is going to now show us a slideshow that will be about 35 minutes or so long. So you're welcome to go ahead, Brian.
Sure. Thanks for that introduction, Hayat. I really appreciate it, and thanks everyone for joining us, and especially to Dorchester People for Peace for opening your virtual doors to us so we can share our work and how you can get involved with it. I want to give out a couple of special thanks. I want to thank Jennifer Rose, who really helped put this slideshow presentation together, and also Paul Shannon, who could not be here tonight, but is really a crucial part of the Raytheon anti-war campaign. It is really his vision that brought about this important campaign to raise awareness about the war in Yemen, and the connection to Massachusetts. As he always says, Yemen seems like it's really far away, but the idea of this campaign is to let the people of Massachusetts know that in reality, so much of what is going on in Yemen is deeply connected with what is happening right here in the Bay State. So just bear with me one moment while I share my screen. Always a fun part of any Zoom presentation. Okay. All right. So, as I said, Raytheon is the local connection to the horrible famine and death in Yemen. So I want to thank everyone again for being here tonight. And first, I'll start you off with a bit more background about the country of Yemen for people who don't know about it. So as you can see, Yemen is a nation just to the south of Saudi Arabia. The capital is Sana'a. The official language is Arabic. Aden, of course, is where the Saudi recognized government is at this point. More than 90% of the population is Arab. It's an Islamic society. Almost all Yemenis are Muslims. About 56% Sunnis, 42% are made up of Shia Muslims. If you want to picture the size of Yemen, one moment. This gives you a pretty good idea of how large Yemen is overlaid over the northeast here. It's about 200,000 square miles. In 2016, the estimated population was 27.6 million people. So that's about the size population-wise of Texas, or in terms of Massachusetts, it's about 4 times the population of Massachusetts. So per capita gross domestic product in 2018 was estimated to be 177th in the world. So that's per capita about $925 per person, which is compared to about $60,000 for the US. So we're talking about the poorest country in the Middle East, even before the war in Yemen broke out. And now that after 5 years of devastating war, we're talking about one of the poorest nations in the world. So the war in Yemen began as a civil conflict. It's a civil conflict even now. But it really started out with protests that were part of the 2011 Arab Spring. Those protests ended the 33-year authoritarian president of Ali Abdullah Saleh. At the time, despite being the president of one of the poorest countries in the world, his net worth was estimated at between $32 billion and $60 billion. So that just tells you about his rule and the resistance to the austerity that the people had to suffer despite the immense wealth and corruption of President Saleh. So he resigned officially in early 2012 as a result of those protests. And he passed his power to this man, who was his vice president, Abdrabbuh Mansur Hadi, and he is still the recognized leader by Saudi Arabia and their coalition, the recognized leader of Yemen, despite the fact that he is not in the country. Dissatisfied with Hadi and the austerity that he continued, a group from the north of Yemen, known as the Houthis, started an uprising in 2014. And they captured the capital of Sana'a in September of that year and forced Hadi to resign. Hadi then traveled south to the city of Aden in southern Yemen, but then he soon withdrew his resignation. The Houthis, in protest of this, began an offensive that quickly surrounded Aden, and that forced President Hadi to flee, this time to Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, in March of 2015. So on the 26th of that month, March of 2015, a coalition of Gulf nations led by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, but the coalition also includes Jordan, Morocco, Sudan, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar. They began an offensive that they dubbed Operation Decisive Storm, which really will let you know how quick and easy that they thought this was going to be, this conflict that has now raged for over 5 years. So their aim was to quickly defeat the Houthis and restore President Hadi to power. But now, despite their plan to get this done quickly, there has been fierce resistance from the people of Yemen, and the war is now over 5 years old. So back when this war began, that very month, March of 2015, the Obama administration announced that it would be providing intelligence and logistical support to the Saudi coalition. They also provided mid-air fueling. So without authorization from the Congress, the US military has been helping the Saudi coalition to plan their strikes, and they've been directly facilitating this war since the very beginning. It is safe to say that this war would not have begun without the approval and the backing of the Obama administration. So let's talk a little bit about the effects that this war has had, and I will just give a quick warning. We will be showing some photos of the war in Yemen and its impacts, and some of them might be a bit disturbing, but we think it's important for people to see actually the effects that this war is having on the people of Yemen. So with an estimated population of 30.5 million people, 24 million people are estimated to be in need of humanitarian assistance. 3.5 million people have been internally displaced. 20 million people are in need of food assistance. Almost 20 million people are in need of basic health care. And keep in mind that these numbers are from December of 2018. So you can assume that the situation, 2 more years of war have only made it worse. It's difficult to get numbers, accurate numbers and estimates out of Yemen. So almost 18 million people are in need of water, sanitation, and hygiene assistance. So some of the estimates of the direct impacts of the airstrikes: 700 civilian deaths and over 1,600 civilian injuries in 2019. 7,300 civilian deaths and over 11,000 civilian injuries since March of 2015. And at least 56,000 have been killed from airstrikes. And keep in mind that these are only estimates. Here are some of the photos from the devastation that you can see in Yemen. This is the result of deliberate attacks that have taken place on fields and flocks, irrigation, and civilian infrastructure. Since the very beginning, Saudi Arabia and its coalition allies have been striking at the civilian infrastructure of Yemen. And these are the results. So it's clear from these photos that Saudi Arabia has, and its allies, UAE and its fellow coalition members, and the United States in direct facilitation, have been using famine and disease as weapons of war. You can see a nice, a good example of it there, of a before and after picture of what Yemen looked like before the war and the devastation afterwards. So despite the emergency in Yemen, the war was largely ignored by the mainstream media for years. This is a statistic from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, which tracks news coverage. It just looked at MSNBC and their coverage of the war. Between July of 2017 and July of 2018, they did absolutely 0 stories on the war in Yemen. And during that same time period, they did 453 stories on Stormy Daniels and her relationship with President Trump. So this person pictured here is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. This is Mohammed bin Salman. He is Crown Prince now, but when the war began, he was Defense Minister of Saudi Arabia. He is the architect of the war in Yemen. it's my belief, and many others as well, that when he launched Operation Decisive Storm, it was mainly to bolster his own resume. And now this war has been going on for more than 5 years. So in 2018, right around the time that I became involved in this work, this man, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS as he is known, came to visit the United States, and he came to visit Massachusetts as well. And he met with politicians, major politicians, including Bill Clinton, and business leaders like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. Time magazine did this feature on him, put him on the cover next to the title Charm Offensive. He was anticipated to be a great reformer, someone who was going to bring change to Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. While he was here in Massachusetts, he came to visit MIT and Harvard. Here he is meeting with President Reif, president of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And there's MBS, there's Raphael Reif, and here in the background is a member of the hit squad that would later go on to murder Washington Post journalist in Istanbul, Jamal Khashoggi. So the Raytheon anti-war campaign, though it didn't exist then, was really formed when MBS came to visit Massachusetts. In fact, that's when I first became involved. Massachusetts Peace Action and some allies called a protest because of what was going on in Yemen, the genocide and the war crimes in Yemen. And that's where I first met some of these folks that were protesting against MBS and the war in Yemen, and I've actually been with them ever since. But later that year, we officially launched the Raytheon anti-war campaign to raise awareness about the Massachusetts connection. So during the Trump administration, our support of this war became more apparent. Donald Trump actually chose as his first foreign trip a trip to Saudi Arabia. Here he is with the king of Saudi Arabia, showing his very public support for that government. Here is our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, meeting with MBS in Saudi Arabia. All right, here on that trip in 2018, here is MBS sitting with Donald Trump, who was bragging about the arms sales and the amount of money, the billions of dollars that the Saudi government spends on U.S. weapons. This is perhaps the one silver lining, although I hate to even call it that, of the Trump administration, is how out in the open he is about the connections, about our support for the Saudi government. Recently, it came to light that Donald Trump said that after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, that he, and I quote, saved Saudi Arabia's ass when many in Congress wanted to cut off arms sales. So another thing that changed the image of this war in Yemen was an attack on a school bus in August of 2018. It was struck by a Saudi bomb and it killed 40 children on a field trip. So this raised awareness of the war in Yemen. Here's a painting that Jim Carrey, of all people, did within the week, uh, connecting US-made weapons with that school bus bombing. Only one of many instances of attacks directly on civilians. But even though, the U.S. press was not covering it, Yemenis know very clearly who is behind this war and what is happening. Here's some artwork in Yemen uh, showing a U.S. drone and asking the very poignant question of why did you kill my family? Many U.S. citizens may not even know where Yemen is, let alone our direct involvement in the genocide and war crimes that are happening there. But you better believe that the people of Yemen absolutely know that it is weapons and warplanes made in the United States that are contributing to the absolute horror that's going on in Yemen right now. So another thing, as I was saying, that really changed how MBS and Saudi Arabia is viewed was the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. He was murdered at a Saudi consulate in Istanbul, as I said before. And despite the fact that so many people were suffering in Yemen before, the murder of a prominent journalist, someone who was working for the Washington Post and writing about Yemen, really did open the eyes of a lot of people in our media who were willing to ignore the suffering of average, poor and working Yemeni people. But someone as connected as Jamal Khashoggi, someone with the contacts in American media and with politicians, it really did begin to change views, or at least make people pay attention. And it did actually lead to the passage of the War Powers Resolution. And this is the first time that a War Powers Resolution has passed both chambers of the U.S. Congress since its first passage in 1973. So through a bipartisan effort led by Senator Bernie Sanders, independent Democrat Chris Murphy, and really conservative Republican Mike Lee of Utah, they were finally able to get it passed through both the House and Senate. Unfortunately, it was vetoed by Donald Trump. And just to show the importance of Yemen and Saudi Arabia, to this date, a majority of the vetoes that Donald Trump has used, I believe 5 of 7 vetoes have had to do directly with arms sales to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and our participation in the war in Yemen. So here are just some more photos of some of the devastation that is going on in Yemen. Just so you can see for yourself. I won't say it's a byproduct because it's a direct result of the bombings of Saudi Arabia and UAE and their coalition forces, have been the largest cholera epidemic of this century, with over 1 million cases of cholera in Yemen. And this is not just the accidental byproduct of war. It is in fact intentional. Saudi Arabia and its allies have been targeting both water wells and water treatment facilities. So when we say that they are using famine and disease as weapons of war, there's lots of evidence for it. In spite of all this, the Trump administration canceled tens of millions of dollars in humanitarian aid. after accusing Yemen's Houthi rebels of diverting and disrupting the aid. So humanitarian aid, insufficient as it is not getting to northern Yemen. President Trump then decided in April to withdraw, April of this year, to withdraw funding for the World Health Organization, which plays an outsized role in Yemen. And critics say that these cuts are politically motivated and really reflect animosity towards Iran. So the situation, as you can see from these photos and from the statistics that I shared, are catastrophic. Yemen's health facility, which before the war was not in great shape, has been absolutely devastated by this war. And now with the pandemic that we're all living through across the world, Yemen is not prepared to meet the struggle. Across Yemen, there are no more than 500 ventilators. There are no more than 700 ICU beds across the entire nation. The WHO, World Health Organization, provided just over 6,000 COVID tests for a country, but this is a country of almost 28 million people. So it really is completely insufficient. So now a little bit more about what this has to do with us here in Massachusetts. Many of the weapons that are being used to cause this suffering and starvation, disease in Yemen, are made by Raytheon, which of course is headquartered right here in Massachusetts, in the small city of Waltham, which is just outside of Boston. It's actually about 10 miles from where I'm sitting right now, and maybe about 15 from Dorchester, for all of you from Dorchester. Just as an example, on August 25th, 2017, a laser-guided bomb from Saudi Arabia destroyed an apartment building in Sana'a. It killed 16 civilians, including 5 out of 6 siblings from one family. This is the only surviving sibling, was a 5-year-old girl. Her eyes were so bruised and swollen that she had to open her eye with her finger, as you can see here, to see visitors. So in the building's rubble, locals found a fragment of the bomb marked with this serial number, as you can see. And it was identified as having been made by Raytheon Missile Systems in Tucson, Arizona. So fragments of missiles and bombs made in the United States, made by Raytheon, by other companies like Lockheed Martin, have been found in the aftermath of attacks on schools, hospitals, markets, water wells. This is how the people of Yemen know that the US is deeply involved. It's not from news reports. It's because they literally find fragments of these exploded weapons that they can then trace to the United States. So if you want to know how involved the US is, I think it was journalist Abby Martin who originally said this, but it really drives the point home. If you think of the bombings in Yemen as a drive-by shooting, then America provides the car, the gun, the bullets, a map, the logistical support, a map to the shooting, and it gassed up the car on its way to the shooting. Now that's how directly involved the United States is. So Raytheon, it's only become worse in the last year. They were already one of the largest weapons manufacturers and war profiteers in the world. And then they merged with United Technologies, another large weapons manufacturer. So they doubled in size. So this already incredibly influential institution has now doubled its revenue and its political influence as well. And if you just want to, if you want to see how influential Raytheon is, just up until last week when he was fired by Donald Trump for other reasons, our Secretary of Defense, the head of our military and Pentagon chief, was this man. That's Mark Esper. And before he joined the Trump administration in 2017, his job was head of governmental relations for Raytheon. So literally just up until a week ago, the head of our Pentagon used to be the top lobbyist for the Raytheon company. Hold on 1 second, I just need to... So a little bit more about the connections between Raytheon and Saudi Arabia. In 2019, Raytheon earned about $29 billion in sales and employed 70,000 people across the world. About 13,000 of those are in Massachusetts. So 69% of Raytheon's sales come from the US government. They mostly sell to the US military. They like to brag that every soldier in the US military, every soldier, sailor, Marine, is trained by Raytheon in the use of their equipment. But Raytheon has been a close partner of Saudi Arabia for more than 50 years. About 5% of its sales come from sales to the Saudi government. Just in the last 5 years or so, Saudi Arabia has been the largest arms importer in the world. Of course, the United States is the largest arms exporter. And just recently, Raytheon has established a facility in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, where it has more than 400 employees. And this is important because it's really quite an aberration from the norm. But Raytheon has been allowed by the Trump administration to build high-tech missiles and bombs and bomb parts in Saudi Arabia. This is very unusual. And it's especially dangerous because now that knowledge of how to build these weapons is being held by Saudi Arabia. So there's our old friend, State Department Director, Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Recently, Steve Linick, a State Department inspector, was fired by the Trump administration. He was investigating on behalf of the US Congress. He was investigating the massive arms sales to Saudi Arabia. The State Department had pushed through $7 billion in sales over congressional objections. The Trump administration actually filed an emergency that allowed them to go forward with those arms sales. And then when they were investigated, the Inspector General was fired. The New York Times and other publications have really taken note. Here's a feature story on the front page from May of this past year. But let's talk about a little bit about what we can do to make a difference. And this is where I'll talk a little bit about the Raytheon campaign before we move on. It was started by Massachusetts Peace Action and some of our other groups, Vets for Peace, Friends Meeting at Cambridge. Hayat listed them before, so I won't list everyone involved here. Revolutionary United Front, of course. But we're hoping that other people on the call tonight, including Dorchester People for Peace, will officially join the campaign to help bolster our strength. So some of the things that we do, we work to make the connection between Raytheon and its destructive activities. So we do demonstrations outside of Raytheon facilities. There are Raytheon facilities across Eastern Massachusetts, in Waltham, in Andover, Massachusetts, in Woburn, Massachusetts, in Tewksbury. And we also work to expose some of the corporate whitewashing that goes on with Raytheon. Raytheon likes to bolster its image by doing charitable work in the area. And this may be just the most absurd example of hypocrisy I've ever heard of. This is a protest that we held at the Walk for Hunger. So despite the fact that Raytheon makes quite a bit of money helping to cause the worst famine in the world today, they're also a major sponsor of the Walk for Hunger put on by Project Bread. So this is a protest that we held at that event to let the approximately 10,000 people who were there walking to raise money for hunger, to let them know that their event was being sponsored by this company that is making money off of hunger in Yemen. And that's actually Congressman McGovern, who was there speaking at the walk on behalf of Project Bread. But since he is also a vocal opponent of the war in Yemen and our partnership with Saudi Arabia, when he saw our protest, he not only walked across and shook all our hands and joined us, but he actually donned one of our shirts and really stepped out and showed support for our campaign. Here we are at a Girl Scout event. Surprisingly, Raytheon is also a major sponsor of the Girl Scouts, despite everything that they do. They're a sponsor of the STEM initiative, trying to call on more women and girls to enter engineering fields. It's really just another example of horrible corporate whitewashing. So that's one thing that the Raytheon anti-war campaign likes to do. Anytime that Raytheon shows up at one of these charity events, we are there to sort of counter their narrative and let them know and show people this is what Raytheon is actually about. This is how they make their money. This is what they're okay with. This is not a good, socially just organization and institution. A couple other things that we've worked on. We have worked on legislation. We worked to support in the National Defense Authorization Act amendments that would end U.S. participation in the war, stop the arms sales. Unfortunately, many of those passed the U.S. House, but when they got to the Republican-controlled Senate, they were stripped out. But we continue to have a legislative strategy as well as doing street protests. And we've also worked at the state level. At the State House, we sponsored a bill that would have divested the state pension funds from Raytheon and all other companies that are contributing to the Saudi war in Yemen. So we did get a chance to have a hearing and introduce to a committee of state reps and senators our concerns over the state pension fund being invested in these companies. Another thing that we do continually is we encourage folks to write op-eds and letters to the editor to make the connection between Yemen and Massachusetts through Raytheon. And here we are at a career fair, especially before COVID made it very difficult to do, obviously, to hold career fairs. Raytheon would regularly go to BU, to MIT, to Tufts, to UMass, to try and get future engineers to come and work for them. Obviously, they don't advertise their connection to the war, to the genocide, to the famine and disease in Yemen. So we committed ourselves to every time that Raytheon would show up to these schools to recruit young engineers to work for them, that we would be there to counter the narrative. And we've actually run into a lot of students that said they didn't know anything about it, that they were considering taking a job at Raytheon, and that now that they would think twice, armed with that information of what Raytheon is really up to. We also support divestment efforts, as I mentioned. And we're also, during COVID, we are calling on Raytheon to use its industrial capabilities to stop making bombs that only cause more disease and death, and to use their factories to actually contribute to something positive. They have the ability to do things like make ventilators, to change their industrial production from something destructive to something constructive. So one of the things that we're doing, especially in the time of COVID, is we've made up these yard signs, and I believe these are still available. So if folks want to get involved, to put a yard sign up, we will give you a way to contact the campaign and have one delivered. Another thing that you can do is, oddly enough, Raytheon actually has an ethics office, although that sort of seems like an oxymoron. But one thing that you can do is actually write to their ethics office to complain and to raise your concerns. A major idea behind the Raytheon campaign is that only when it affects their bottom line and their reputation will Raytheon change its behavior. And finally, we put on educational programs like the one that you're listening to right now. So we're always looking for more organizations to present for, more organizations to actually bring into the campaign. So if you're interested in getting involved, you can please contact us. My personal email, and I'll put this in the chat, and a follow-up email is Brian with an I at masspeaceaction.org. But you can also follow our Twitter at Anti-War Raytheon. You can check out our programs. We put them all on YouTube. You can just search YouTube Mass Peace Action. They're all on that channel. If you want to send us a letter, there's our mailing address as well as our phone number. So I want to thank everyone for listening to this presentation of the Raytheon campaign, and for letting me tell you a little bit about what the campaign does and how you can get involved. But with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Hayat. Thanks.
Hi, that was just wonderful, Brian. Thank you so much. I'm sure people have some questions now. I would like to suggest that you click participants at the bottom of your page. You'll see it on slightly to the left of the bottom. And if you have a question, you use the raise hand icon, and I'm going to call upon you for any questions that you may have. So I see Kelly Reddy. Let me see.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted, yes.
Okay, good. My question is, who are the people that are being bombed? Why is the United States and Saudi Arabia so determined to destroy them?
It's a good question, and I wish I had a better answer for you. The main antagonist for Saudi Arabia and the coalition has been this group that comes from northern Yemen, known as the Houthis. Ansar Allah, I believe, is their official name. They take their name from a man, actually, and a family known as the Houthis. But as to why this war goes on, it's hard to say. I personally am of the belief that they did intend this to be a very, very quick war to reinstall their preferred leader. This would be Saudi Arabia. That would be President Hadi. I think the name of the military operation, Decisive Storm, really says it all. I think it really was supposed to be a resume builder for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And like so many of these wars, it was supposed to be quick and easy and inexpensive. And I think that it drags on and on. I think the main reason for it at this point is because they don't want to admit defeat. They don't want to admit that this group of people in Yemen, without major backing, from a poor country, could defeat one of the largest and most expensive militaries in the world. That's why I think this war continues to go on. And obviously, we are of the mindset that one of the driving forces to continue the war is the massive profits for companies like Raytheon. That's one thing that Donald Trump, after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a lot of people were calling for us to end the arms sales as punishment. I believe it was on 60 Minutes. He came right out and said that it was jobs that he cared about, that he didn't want to cut off the arms sales because he said it would affect jobs at places like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing. So we believe that that's a major reason why the war continues is money.
I'd just like to add one thing to that. I think that when we say that Saudi Arabia buys weapons, we are really talking about an individual who's making a lot of decisions for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not organized for the community of Saudi Arabia to make decisions. So the decision to buy, or let's put it the other way, the decision to spend Saudi Arabian money, billions of dollars to buy arms, had to be justified in some way. So this war was going to be the excuse that bin Salman used in order to justify spending that kind of money, which is the people's money, to buy those kinds of arms. So that is another aspect of why wars continue. It's to justify the arms that we're being bought and that are being sold. So the next person who has a question is Josna Rege.
Hi, Hayat. Thank you very much for the informative presentation, Brian. I had two questions very quickly. How is the resistance? How does it support itself? And does it have broad popular support? So that was one question. The other question is about what we can do. Is there a way to bring back that resolution that Bernie Sanders introduced with others and bring it before the Biden administration? And do you have any thoughts on whether it would have a better chance of going through?
Yes, I'll take your second question first. And I think my colleague Chance is actually going to talk a bit more about the political moment that we're in and the chance to end the war in Yemen, because Joe Biden during the campaign did promise that he would end the war in Yemen. But just recently, I have heard that Representative Ro Khanna, who is the leading force in the House of Representatives on this, has said that if the war is not ended within the first couple of weeks of the Biden administration, that he will indeed reintroduce a war powers resolution, and that will be privileged. So it will get a vote, and I, for one, think that it will be deeply embarrassing for a new Biden administration to have that kind of challenge from a Congress held by the same party, controlled by the Democrats. To answer your first question about the support, it is a civil war, but it's important to be clear that the position of the Raytheon anti-war campaign and Massachusetts Peace Action is not one in support of the Houthis. Our view is that this is none of our business. We should not be involved in deciding, who the government of Yemen is. That is up to the Yemeni people. As for the amount of support that the Houthis have in Yemen, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that. But I will say that it's enough support that they have been able to resist one of the largest militaries in the world. In Saudi Arabia, they spend something like $80 billion on their military every year. And this poor country that has been absolutely devastated by complete air superiority has been able to resist one of the strongest countries in the world just across their border.
Thank you, Brian. There will be time for more questions in just a little bit. I think we should highlight the question that was just asked, which is, what are the opportunities that now exist in this political moment? And we have our Raytheon Campaign member, Chance Charlie, here. So he'll be speaking in just a few minutes. But I'd like to take a minute to say that I would like to set the context of what is the opportunities in this political moment, which is obvious in the US just now with the changes, but what is the opportunity in Saudi Arabia? So I just want to make two quick points, of which the first one is a loaded point and warrants probably a much longer discussion, perhaps at another meeting dedicated to exploring just this issue. What I wanted to say is that a very, very old agenda for the United States, and it's a long-term priority of ours, is to suppress independent secular nationalism. And that is wherever it occurs. But this is particularly true of Arab and Iranian nationalism. And if you look back at history, there are many, many examples of such interventions. So I would like to assert the fact that Saudi Arabia is a client state of the United States, whose present job is to assist the USA to suppress independent secular Arab nationalism. And Yemen, unfortunately, has fallen victim to this agenda. The second point I want to make is that the opportunity in this political moment, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, in order to end this war on Yemen, which didn't go according to plan at all. The idea initially was to go in, smash Yemen, and go out quickly. And that, of course, as Brian pointed out, did not happen. Instead, the grit of Yemen has turned it into this long, drawn-out 5-year engagement that they weren't really ready for that. The Saudis have already spent $100 billion worth of arms. In other words, they've spent that much money to buy $100 billion worth of arms. And with oil revenues that are plummeting right now, The Saudis are really being drained economically. And I believe that at this moment, it's an opportune moment to press on hard, because I think they're ready to end the aggression in Yemen and do it as quickly as possible that they can. So this is the Saudi side of it. So I want to invite Chance, as I said, he's a member of the Raytheon anti-war campaign, to invite him to talk about the opportunities in the United States just now. Go ahead, Chance.
Yeah, thank you, Hayat, and thanks, Brian, also for that presentation. Yeah, like Brian said earlier, Biden promised actually on the campaign trail during Democratic debates and in his platform that he wants to end U.S. support for the war in Yemen, readdress the U.S.'s relationship to Saudi Arabia, including cutting off weapon sales to the country. You know, he's made this promise, and this is definitely a very welcome change if it was to, you know, really go through. Like we saw with the presentation, Yemen has suffered for over 5 years through this genocidal bombing campaign, a brutal blockade that's aimed at completely destroying the country and its people. And you know, the fact that a war powers resolution actually succeeded in passing the House and Senate recently, only to be vetoed, shows that this is something that is in theory feasible. But I think it is important, especially for, you know, peace-loving people, we shouldn't be holding our breath that the Yemen war is going to end under this new administration. And I'd like to talk just a little bit about that, because I think it is important that we see that the decisive action still is really not with Biden, not with a new administration, but with us as people, as an anti-war movement. So as many of you may be aware, Biden's record in US politics is very long, and none of it gives really any indication that he's going to live up to this promise. He's been a consistent hawk. He was part of the Obama administration, which started this war and gave the green light to the Saudis. It was under Obama that Yemen first faced famine, cholera, the destructive effects of relentless bombing campaigns, both from Saudi coalition planes and US drones, even though all of this, like Brian said, really only entered the discourse and came to light in a big way for many in the US in 2018 after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. But Biden's record isn't just there on Yemen. It's much dirtier than that. He was a key figure pushing for the Iraq war, the US invasion, saying in 2003, I voted for us to go into Iraq and I'd vote to do it again. And as a result of that invasion and occupation, nearly 2.5 million Iraqis died. Biden supported the invasion of Afghanistan, the 1999 bombing of Serbia. He's been a consistent supporter of NATO and a staunch supporter of Israel and Zionist aggression, even saying on the Senate floor in a clip that recently gained some more attention that if Israel did not exist, we would have to create one. These are just a handful of examples of Biden's support for militarism and imperialism. But Biden's nearly 50-year-long career in government has plenty more. So now, after the election, Biden's begun building his new cabinet, and many of the names that are being floated stand out as war hawks. His potential picks for foreign policy positions include Susan Rice, who was National Security Advisor under Obama, and Michelle Flourney, who was an Undersecretary of Defense during the first Obama administration. Both Rice and Flourney were important in pushing for the Iraq war, as well as US intervention in Libya. They're both consistent defenders of the doctrine of so-called humanitarian intervention. Flourney, who the media are saying is likely to be tapped as the next Pentagon head, amassed a small personal fortune doing lobbying for military contractors, even founding her own security think tank called West Exec Advisors. And speaking of a local connection, Michelle Flourney actually joined the Boston Consulting Group after leaving the Obama administration. And while she was there, she oversaw the increase in their military portfolio from $1.6 million to over $32 million. Also introducing the first investments in the Defense Department for the Boston Consulting Group. She's also worked with several other consulting firms and think tanks, helping secure military contracts, develop military strategies and justifications for interventions. as another local connection, actually, Flournoy is also a senior fellow at Harvard's Belfer Center, which since 2017 has been directed by Ash Carter. And for those who don't know, Ash Carter was Secretary of Defense under Obama when the war on Yemen began. He became Secretary of Defense, I believe, February, and US support for the war in Yemen began March of that year. And Ash Carter was a consistent defender of the war and the US drone policy in Yemen. And unsurprisingly, Flournoy herself has come out against cutting weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. So none of this bodes well for Biden making an end to the Yemen war a priority, much less actually following through on it. And of course, even if he did cut support to the Saudis and the UAE, this is nothing about the US's own drone warfare that's being carried out in Yemen. There have been hundreds of confirmed drone strikes and probably many more that have been unconfirmed in Yemen since 2002, which is actually where the first drone strike carried out by the US government took place. The drone programs, which are operated by the military and the CIA, and they're actually two separate programs, they're shrouded in secrecy, but we do know from leaks and from local reporting that civilian casualties of these attacks are extremely high. In Afghanistan, for example, according to documents published by The Intercept in 2015, drone attacks only hit their intended target 1 out of 10 times, meaning 90% of fatalities were unintentional, likely civilians. And we can expect similar rates for other countries and in other periods. So Obama really escalated this drone warfare in Yemen and elsewhere to terrifying new heights. Trump has deepened the role of drone warfare in US military action. And Biden's foreign policy platform says absolutely nothing about drones, which indicates he will probably be continuing this pattern. In short, the Biden administration is being talked about by many progressives as a return to normalcy. And I think people are understandably relieved, that Trump's time in power is over. But we have to keep in mind that it was this normalcy which put Yemen into crisis in the first place. So we can't rest easy with Biden's promises. That being said, I don't want that to, be a nihilistic message, because the fact that Biden is saying that he wants to end the war in Yemen, even if he doesn't actually believe that, even if he doesn't intend to keep his promises, the fact that that's there gives us actually a very big opportunity to organize right now to actually fight for that and to actually win that. Things are actually much more favorable for us right now than they were at any other point under the Trump administration in terms of actually ending this war. So we really have to build up this movement, not rest easy with Biden's promises, but get organized to put an end to this war. That's why we're working right now to organize a demonstration in Boston on January 25th, which, as Hayat mentioned earlier in the presentation, this is part of an international day of action to end the war in Yemen, to force Biden to end the war within his first 10 days in office. And over 125 organizations around the world have signed on to support this day of action worldwide, including the Raytheon Anti-War Campaign and many of its constituent groups. And this is a very big moment. It's a key moment, really, not just to end the war in Yemen, but to revitalize the American anti-war movement, to really bring together and build up a strong, popular grassroots movement to oppose US militarism and imperialism, all of these forever wars that have been going on, drone warfare, everything. And I think that's the kind of movement that we really need and that we really lack. And it's that sort of movement, if we build that powerful grassroots energy and get people involved and get organized, it's going to be that movement and not any politician, no matter how progressive or anti-war. It's going to be that movement that really makes change, I think. So yeah, I mean, if people here are interested in contributing, getting involved, otherwise helping out with this, definitely let us know, because yeah, this is a very important moment to end the war in Yemen. And despite the fact that Biden, I have no faith in him as an individual, I think right now is a very opportune moment that we really have to seize. So that's all I have to say. Thanks again for putting on this presentation.
Thank you so much, Chance. I loved your stirring call for us to revitalize the anti-war movement. Its time has come, definitely. I wonder if, Brian, you might want to go back to that declaration and just explain a little bit, a little more about this International Day of Solidarity with the people of Yemen. It seems like it's the first time. There have been pockets of resistance to this war for a while in many countries, but what we're doing now is really exciting, and I want Brian to give a quick little overview of that.
Sure, let me put it back up on the screen. I was sharing it there for a little while, but this is the joint statement that we have developed with some of the organizations here. I'll just scroll down to, I think I showed you 126 organizations.
Maybe a little bit larger, because is it 100%, or can we do it?
Let me see. There you go. Probably a little easier to see now.
Yeah.
So a lot of great organizations from across the world, 14 countries, I believe, last time I checked. Stop the War Coalition in Britain, Action Corps based in New York, the Yemeni Alliance Committee, Yemen Relief and Reconstruction, Code Pink. A lot of these organizations you'll recognize, but there were many that I had not even heard of. From across the world, Bangladesh, India, all over. There has been, because this is the worst humanitarian catastrophe in the world. It's widely recognized as that. So a few core organizations, like Action Corps, Peace Action, Code Pink, came together just a couple of months ago. With the idea of trying to put pressure. We didn't know who would win the American election at that point, but we knew that there needed to be a concerted effort to pressure whoever was going to be president in January. So put out a call to all of our contacts, and it just sort of snowballed. And there's going to be many different ways that people can protest. They're still being developed right now. So, there's going to be webinars like this. We're going to try and get, very prominent experts and, even some celebrities who have supported the cause of ending the war in Yemen, if possible. Try and get the word out to average people. Put the call out for people to, flood the offices with letters and phone calls and voicemails and tweets and emails, and just to show people, because I think Chance really said it well. Just because Joe Biden on the campaign trail said that he was going to end this war, I mean, we all know that campaign promises are not worth the paper that they're written on. And I, like Chance, do not trust a politician any farther than I can throw one. So I think the only way that they're going to follow through on this promise is by massive public pressure. And that, in my mind, is what we need to do. We need to present the Biden administration with the fact that, hey, you promised that you would do this. And if they don't do it immediately, they should be incredibly embarrassed in the press. And that will have to occur through public action, public direct action. Chance is right. No politician is going to do this for us. It's going to take masses of people demanding it. That's the only way that things ever change. But, we have always thought that this absolute brutal war in Yemen is, a lens through which you can see all of U.S. Imperial policy. Just because this is so barbaric, it is so clear that this is not in keeping with the values that they teach you when they teach you about the myth of America. So this is an opportunity for us not only to end the war in Yemen, but to set a precedent that wars like this can be ended, especially through public pressure. So I'm going to be sending this link out uh, along with lots of other helpful links and different organizations. If you're a member of different organizations that have yet to sign on to this, we encourage you to do so and to send it out to other organizations that you know of that can help, because we're up to 126 now. I would like to double that, if not more. I was shocked at how quickly we got to this many. So I think we can do it. And also, we're going to be sending out an opportunity for you to join the Raytheon anti-war campaign, because right now we're going to develop, different forms of creative protest that we can do leading up to the 25th and on the 25th. Effective ways that we can get the word out, get the press to cover it, get the message out to influential people. And we need your ideas as well. This isn't just going to be about signing on to a letter. We really need all the ideas that we can get from creative people. I'm sure there's a lot of them on this call right now who can help. Please, I'll be sending this out as well. Join us. I'm really looking forward to hearing all the different ideas that can come out of this. I've always believed that you need to try different things and go with whatever catches on.
So maybe we could actually just open up for a little bit now for anyone, if you wanted to try that, raise up your hand again if you have any ideas or thoughts off the top of your head. And as you're thinking, I just want to say that we at Raytheon Anti-War Campaign had a 10-minute brainstorm and came up with so many good ideas that I just wanted to share a few as you're thinking, and then we hope to see what you have to say. So we said that we should, this January 25 event is, as you note, 5 days after his inauguration. So we have to slam as soon as the iron is hot, or whatever the metaphor is. I'm getting them mixed up, but you know what I mean. We should be putting immediate pressure on Biden to end the US involvement. But at the same time, what we want to do is that it'll be a way to mobilize more people to come out and join this effort to end the war. There's going to be events all over this country, all over the world, and we were trying to think of a way that we could tie all those actions together in all the different cities, and perhaps have an all-day Zoom event where everything that is going on all over the world would be highlighted. We could pressure or actually support Ro Khanna, who has said that he wants to bring back the War Powers Amendment. So we could do an interview with him and bring him on for, at some point in the day. You might have other ideas for what to put into such a event, stream something from your side, what you're doing. If it's a nice day, we'll probably want to be outside. We'll mobilize outside. If it's not, we should use the honorable Zoom and do the best we can. So yeah, anybody have any reactions, thoughts right now to share? Please go to participants and raise your hand. And
I see one in the chat from Denise, who's asking, who says a big challenge is how we're going to connect this campaign to the struggle at the local level. And that's sort of the idea behind this campaign as it was formulated by Paul Shannon, who is really the heart and soul of this campaign.
And I think it's always a challenge, like with in DPP, where I think now our emphasis is more on getting involved with local struggles and how to make this connection, and how to get, again, make this connection and get people on the local struggle to join in, and vice versa, really.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I will say that just in the past couple of weeks, there was a large gathering right after Election Day for Protect the Results. Lots of progressive activists out there. And I will say I was out there pitching an anti-war message, and a lot of people were very receptive. People get this. There were a couple of rallies. There was a rally that night, the same, more young people, people of color. They understand the connections, both morally, that peace is a racial justice issue, that it's an environmental issue, and just also the massive amount of money that we're spending on destruction and the opportunity costs that go along with that. This is money that we should be investing in our schools. And in our people. And I think people understand that too.
And I think we should have more of a presence and bringing this message in local, in like places when we go kind of fighting and presenting local issues. And often people are very open to hear this message, but, I think we have to do even better on that, not ask only people to come to the activities we do around, challenging Raytheon and that, but also us going to event and issues and bringing up the issues and responding to, often people are quite willing to give us a voice and we have to use it.
Yeah, I think solidarity really is the answer, Denise, to that question. We need to stand with these other issues that we support, and then we'll get the support in return. It's not easy. It requires work.
No.
But it's necessary. Maybe Chance, you have some.
No, I think I think you're right. The main thing is really building up solidarity, and I think the connection is there, and I think we're able to show people, Yemen isn't as far away as it seems on a map. Even without Raytheon, it's only like a 12-hour plane ride. But I think by making that connection, we do drive home a very important point. But I think actually the more important one is actually even no matter where people are. If people are being oppressed, if people are facing, these bombing campaigns or genocidal strategies of using famine as war or oppression in any other form, we have a right and a duty actually to stand up and stand with them and fight for them and support their struggle. And I think by being consistent with that and by touching at that, I think, that's how we build up a strong movement here that's really connected, not just at the local level, but at the international level, to the interests and to the needs of oppressed people all around the world.
Well, I want to thank everyone who attended and everyone who presented, everyone who spoke, and everyone who I hope will keep connected. So I'm going to end now in the last few minutes by saying that there were different ways that we are offering to keep connected. Brian's going to send out quite a few links. So I urge you all to please look at those links. There will be chances to sign on from your organizations to this overall campaign. There'll be ways in which that you can send us back your ideas for what your local groups might do here or might want from us to get support for your work. So I think that the value of this event where you've sat with us for an hour and a half is if we can keep going with whatever has been started here. So I urge you to keep connected and to come back to us with your ideas. Thank you so very much for being with us. I thank you, Chance. Thank you, Brian. And thank you all. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.